Hey all, thanks for stopping by here at Brian for Liberty. I appreciate it. If you're tuning in for the first time, if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. I'm going to go over a few different things today. I'm also have taken some notes. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret, and that is that I recorded this whole thing about 20 minutes. One take. It was beautiful. I thought it was great. I sound a little like Trump right there. Thought it was a great episode, and turns out my mic wasn't on. I hit stop on my record, on my voiceover, my software over here, and nothing. So we'll double check, make sure the mic's on. I also want to say, for those of you who've tuned in before, yes, this is my COVID cut. This is the end result of my my clippers breaking as I was trying to give myself a buzz, and I look like I just escaped from an insane asylum, so I pulled out the razor and shaved it right off. You know it's fresh because of the beautiful tan line. You can also see how far my hairline had actually receded, so that's pretty sad. So now I got to get out for some runs and darken up the rest of the scalp. So, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Like I said, it's my COVID cut. In a few weeks, she'll be back, but I just thought I'd share that beauty with you guys today. Hey, few things I want to talk about today. I watched the morning programs and, of course, watched the two polar opposite opinions of how Donald Trump has handled this whole situation, whether you are a Morning Joe MSNBC person or a Fox News in the morning person, you have a very different opinion of how Donald Trump has handled this whole situation. And it's interesting to me, and I think that it's funny, it's sad, but it's also funny how different, if you just flip back, watch one for 5 minutes and switch to the other one for 5 minutes, and it really is, it's entertaining. And then this time, when we're all consuming news anyway, take a minute and go check out these two polar opposites. It's record some Rachel Maddow and then go watch Hannity. It's good stuff. It's good stuff, and I've been talking about media bias and hyperpartisanship, and I actually did a survey on my TikTok account. And what's more dangerous? Is it media bias or is it hyperpartisanship? For those of you who aren't familiar, hyperpartisanship. Everybody's partisan, right? Republican, Democrat, I'm a libertarian, Green Party, whatever. Everybody's got some partisanism to them. They're all going to defend their party to some extent. Hyperpartisanship, to me, as my definition of it, is the absolute inability to criticize or acknowledge any criticism of the political party that you associate with. All right, so that's A, and B is media bias, which we all know media bias exists. I don't think anybody's saying that it's not the case anymore. I think anybody can watch MSNBC or Fox News and know who they're kind of in the bag for. And the overwhelming answer on TikTok was that that media bias was more dangerous, but I don't think that that's true. I don't think it's media bias is as dangerous as we try and make it out to be. I think that hyperpartisanship is way worse. And the reason being is no matter how biased the media gets, there's always multiple viewpoints, at least. You can go from Hannity to Maddow, Fox News, MSNBC. You can do the smart thing and shut it all off, not watch any of it, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. So you can consume from multiple sources and still get multiple viewpoints. So while the media may be biased in general, there's still plenty of different viewpoints out there. It's not like all of the media is biased and it's all in the exact same direction. So hyperpartisanship forces you into a bit of an echo chamber. And I think this is a danger in a place that we're getting to in this country where I'm not even willing to listen to somebody I don't agree with. I don't agree with you. I am not going to listen, which means I'm not going to be challenged in my beliefs, which means I'm not going to have to work hard to support or defend those beliefs. If all I'm doing is tuning in and taking in content that supports what I already believe, then I become more and more closed off to the rest of the world and unwilling and unable to even communicate with people outside of my political belief system. And I think that's very dangerous. It makes us very uncooperative as a nation, as individual citizens. You look at a crisis like the one we're going through right now, and you wish we could just be a little bit more cooperative and a little bit less, a little bit more trusting of our neighbors and our fellow man. I mean, I've got seeing texts here and memes of Karens calling people on the, oh, this guy who's coming over and picking up groceries and reporting people for for getting together. They think they see something that's a violation of a stay-at-home order, and they're picking up the phone and they're calling the police on their neighbors. And boy, we're not going to survive as a society if that's how we're going to treat each other. And I think hyper-partisanship kind of leads to that a little bit. I think we make assumptions about the people around us, and we then feel like it's okay to just treat them that way or to ignore their needs or wants because, well, they don't agree with me. I don't have to take that in because clearly they're wrong. Because when you're in that echo chamber, you're not just being told that those people are wrong. In modern politics, you're being told that those people are evil. They're coming for you. I don't know. It's just an odd situation. So when I look at like these morning programs, I always encourage people, hey, watch a little bit of everything, no matter what you believe. Take in content that challenges your belief system, and don't just go back to your own little echo chamber and get reinforced on what you already believe. That's just a bad situation. Anyway, I ramble as I tend to do. I wanted to give my thoughts on moving forward from here. The grumbling is starting to get loud. People are getting tired. We're all getting a little stir crazy. We're all getting a little cabin fever. It snowed today in Wisconsin, which doesn't help. Or yesterday, we had an actual snowstorm in April on Easter. So, not even able to get outside the house. And, I've been trying to get out and keep my running going. And we're all trying to find ways to keep ourselves busy. Some of us are on furlough, and so there isn't work Monday through Friday to keep us engaged. So, idle hands and boredom, and there's a little anger. We're all starting to become real internet experts about this disease, and there's a lot of bad information out there. But I just wanted to give my thoughts on how do we move forward from here, because the talk about reopening the country, I mean, really, most of what you're hearing is we're at least 2 weeks to 3 weeks out in most places before the stay-at-home orders start coming down. But I think there's still going to be a lot of restrictions. I don't think you're going to have the stay-at-home order's over, everything's open. I think you're going to see other restrictions come in to play. I also think you're going to have enough fear that people aren't going to be out interacting as they normally would. Unemployment's going to stay relatively high, at least in the short term. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. I think one of the things that's coming out is that we did a nice job flattening the curve this time around, but because of that, a lot of people haven't been exposed to the best of our knowledge because our testing is so bad and it's so backed up. We're not testing at the rate that we should be, and because of that, we don't know how many people have been exposed, but it seems that we've kept the exposure rate relatively low, which means if we get back to normal, well, we're going to be right back in here, and in a couple of months, we're going to be trying to flatten the curve again. This is what I'm reading from. Again, I'm no expert, but this is what I've been reading from virologists and epidemiologists, and I'm talking about this stuff right after making fun of people for becoming internet experts on this disease. So take it all with a grain of salt, but it just seems to make sense to me that the disease isn't gone. It hasn't vanished. We don't have immunity. We don't have vaccination. So as we return back to normal, we're going to end up in a position where there's going to be another curve. And I think that that's what we need to deal with. I think we need to deal with the fact that we're going to have to confront this. We aren't going to be able to wait for an actual vaccination to become tested, available, to know that it works, to know that it's safe. We're not going to be able to wait and stay in this limbo of economic I don't know what you want to call it, an economic timeout until this vaccination becomes available. We're looking at 5 months, 6 months, maybe 18 months before we have a vaccine that can protect us from this. So we have to confront the fact that we're going to have to deal with this sickness. I think there's a few things to take into consideration as we try and reopen the country and get back to normal, which is something I think we should be doing right now. And I know a lot of people would say that would be foolhardy. But like I said, we're going to have to confront this. I don't think that we're going to be in a position where, okay, the country's open and everybody's going to go out and act like nothing ever happened. I think you're going to have people wearing masks. I think everybody's going to be way more careful about making sure that they're using hand sanitizer, not touching their face, coughing into the elbow. All the things that you do to mitigate the spread of this kind of a disease are going to be taking place at a much, much higher level. I think the public service announcements and the governments and businesses are going to be telling people constantly there's going to be constant reminders until this becomes an ingrained part of the way our society functions moving forward. I also think that people who are high at risk, the elderly, people who have underlying conditions, are going to obviously continue to intentionally stay at home and continue to isolate. And I think that opening the businesses back up and opening up the economy creates an infrastructure, a support structure that's going to be better able to help and provide for those people, because there's people working, people are earning money, the businesses are open. The panic level probably comes down a little bit as life starts to normalize a little. And so maybe some supplies are becoming more available. I still can't get more hand sanitizer. I don't know who's got all the hand sanitizer, but people, if you want to stop the spread of this thing, you got to take enough for a couple of weeks. The next 2 weeks when you go back to the store, there's going to be no more hand sanitizer on the shelf. Everybody needs to get their hands on this stuff so that we can all sanitize. So you're not doing yourselves any favor by hoarding. So stop hoarding the hand sanitizer. Anyway, I think that you're going to see people behaving in a more responsible way when it comes to preventing the spread of this kind of a disease. And so the curve is never going to look like that worst case scenario curve that we initially saw. You do have an infection rate. There are people who've already had it who probably have some level of immunity to it. The other thing is we're going to be modifying our behavior moving forward to prevent the spread of this. So I don't think we're ever going to see that worst case scenario curve. So what we really need to do is to continue to build up our capacity. Ventilators, masks, hand sanitizer, all these different things that we're doing to try and prepare for a surge in cases. We need to be prepared for it, and we're going to need to reopen, and we're going to need to deal with it. And that sounds scary and it sounds terrible, but the best case scenario, or the best case in terms of testing, came out of South Korea, because South Korea was way ahead of this thing on getting a test put together and getting it out so that people could utilize it, and their testing was just way ahead of everybody else's. Based on that, their mortality rate is also probably more accurate than everybody else's, because they've tested such a large percentage of their population, and their mortality rate on this disease came in at 0.66. That's higher than the flu, I know that, but it's way lower than the 2, 3, 4% that we've been hearing. At a 0.6% mortality rate, and significantly lower than that if you are not an at-risk person, i.e. you're not elderly or have an underlying condition. This is something that we need to deal with, that we need to go out there and re-engage in the economy, and we need to be prepared for a surge in cases. And we also have to recognize the fact that when this first started, we were trying to protect people because nobody knew who had what. We didn't know a lot about the disease, and we didn't know how it spread. We didn't know how dangerous it was and all of those different things. That information's all out there now. Getting back out into the community now does not present a risk to an unreasonable risk. And by that I mean, I compare it with drunk driving. Okay? Drunk driving is illegal, and it should be. Why? Because you don't know that I'm drunk driving. You have a reasonable expectation to be on the road and assume that the other drivers are going to behave in a predictable manner and that they are being responsible and they're not under the influence of a substance that makes them lowers their ability to drive. That's a reasonable expectation, and so it's reasonable for the government to say you can't be on the roads because you present an unreasonable risk, a risk that is so much higher that it would have, in my opinion, it violates the non-aggression principle by putting other people at that risk against their will. They have a right to be on the road. You have a right to be on the road. You don't have a right to drastically increase the risk that they're facing. Okay, does that make sense? Let's move on. In the case of the coronavirus, early on, you could have potentially have made a case that because nobody knows how easily this is spread, nobody knows how dangerous it is, you don't even know, possibly you're asymptomatic, that just by being out in public, you are putting people at an unreasonable risk. That period is over now. Everybody knows how dangerous the disease is. Everybody knows if they are whether or not they are high risk or low risk. Everybody knows that. The simple act of existing and being out in public now, that is a risk you are assuming. The disease is out there. The sickness is out there. You know it. So if you choose to go to a restaurant or you choose to go to a movie theater, you are putting yourself at risk, right? And that applies to everyone. Everyone who chooses to go out and engage in the economy, whether it's going to a movie theater, going to a restaurant, going to the bar, doing whatever, going to the gym, whatever activity you're engaging in. I had to throw something healthy in there at the end. But whatever activity you are engaging in is a choice you're making in full awareness of this illness. It's out there. The information has been provided to you. So now we are not in a position where we're putting people at risk without knowledge. Everybody has the knowledge now. So you should no longer be compelling me to stay indoors. If you are afraid of that risk, then it's your option to not engage in the economy. Doing the only things that you're doing, right? You're going shopping and you're coming home and you're staying home. If you want to continue to make that choice to protect yourself and keep yourself safe, then you're free to do that. But I should now be free to go back out and engage in the economy. Speaking of free, I really hope that the conversation comes up that we literally suspended constitutional rights during this crisis. And we need to look at that and determine where the safeguards are for liberty in the event of an emergency. Our government's one based on checks and balances, and massive powers were exercised by governors across the country to literally set aside. The First Amendment guarantees the right to peacefully assemble. Governors have set that aside. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. There's no state law that takes those rights away. That's a basic human right so important that it was in the First Amendment of our Constitution. Some states have suspended gun purchases. That's the Second Amendment in our Constitution. That's a constitutional right. We're talking about moving forward and moving past this. We're talking about tracking and having to carry papers proving immunity or vaccination. A lot of dystopian science fiction type stuff when it comes to your privacy moving forward. Another right codified in the Bill of Rights. So these are important topics that I really hope that we are discussing as we start coming out of this thing and returning to normal. But at this point, I don't think a case can be made that is unreasonable risk for me to be out. That's a risk I am assuming, and every other person who's out would also be assuming. So it's time to reopen the economy. It's time to start reopening the country. It's time to take these lockdown, these stay-at-home orders need to go away, and we need to start moving forward. We have to face this disease. We have to know that it's out there. We have to be prepared for it. We have to increase our capacity and raise that line, right? The healthcare capacity line has to come up. And we also have to understand that if we reopen the economy tomorrow, the curve is going to come down naturally through natural human behavior and adjustments we're all going to make coming out of this crisis. So it's time to open the economy right now. It's not 2 weeks from now. It's not a month from now. It is time to let people go back to work. So on that end, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, is all the conspiracy theory stuff I've been seeing on social media. And I just want to throw this out there because I think it's dangerous. I think it's foolish. I think that a lot of people are looking at this thing and saying it was all a hoax. It was overblown. Like, the President of the United States said it, right? So I guess we can't hold the internet people to a higher standard than the President of the United States, unfortunately. So I'm just going to say that I don't understand the idea that this is some kind of a grand conspiracy to do what? Is it to take control of your life? Folks, the government issued a stay-at-home order because if you go outside, you might get sick, and you all listened. They closed all non-essential businesses. They locked you in your houses, and you guys didn't do anything about it. They don't have to hoax anybody to take control. They already have control. You're already listening. They print the money. You do whatever they tell you. They don't have to have some kind of grand conspiracy to gain control. They already have it. So the idea that this was all overblown conspiracy theory, blah, 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 I think a lot of that's nonsense. I've also seen a lot of people saying, and this was something that a scientist brought up, and I looked for the quote today, and I couldn't find it, but it was brought up by a scientist and someone in the scientific community that if we did all these things, all these preventive measures, the stay-at-homes and social distancing and all that stuff, and it worked, that as we come out of it, people are going to say this all was for nothing. We didn't need to do this. This wasn't as serious as we were led to believe. That's what happens when you avert a crisis by taking crisis management steps. The crisis doesn't look like it was going to be as bad as it was because we mitigated it through action. So you can agree with it, not agree with it, but the hoaxy online conspiracy theory stuff is, I don't know, it destroys credibility, and I think that we have real important topics to talk about in terms of defending liberty on the backside of this, and talking about constitutional rights, and talking about gubernatorial authority at a state level to set aside constitutional rights in the event of an emergency, and how we can set up infrastructure state by state to protect those things so that governors can act in an emergency, but we can feel secure that there is a check to that power to make sure that government doesn't continue to overstep its authority and overstep its the actions that are necessary to provide for the public safety. So those are serious conversations we need to have, not the the whatever men behind the Illuminati are closing down because they can do that. It's just trying to set that stuff aside. So that's it. That's all I got for today. It's been a long day. It took me I didn't have I'm not at a barber shop, so I didn't have a straight razor. I like a disposable razor to shave my head today. So it took quite a bit of time. Despite the fact that those of you who know me know that I'm losing my hair, it still took quite a bit of time to shave off the remnants. So it's been a long day. I hope everybody's out there staying safe, staying healthy. Please, if you like the content, please take just a second to subscribe. If you really like it, take a second and share it. And if you hated it, subscribe anyways, and then beat up on me in the comment section every time I put one of these out. So thank you all for coming by, and we will see you all next time.